Hey guys, welcome back to the page. This is Michael Luzier here, L4 Property Group in Henderson. I'm going to spend some time today talking about buyer representation agreements. Not going to say it's the most important form we do. There's a lot of important forms, but this one is pretty big. Two different types. There's a long form and a short form. We'll show you both of them. But this is what creates agency. This is what creates the relationship between you and your client. So important to know it, important to go over it, explain it, because it's not only binding to you, it's also binding to your client, and they need to understand what they're signing, what kind of agreement is being put in place, and what they're committing to, as well as what we're going to offer them. So this is the buyer tenant representation agreement, the long form. This needs to be signed early in the relationship. This is what legally creates the relationship between you and your buyer. I like the long form because it has more information in it. It's information that you're going to need if you do go under contract to submit a contract with somebody, but it also just shares more info with them. The short form has a place. It's a one-page form we'll look at the very end. This is important to keep with you when you're out and about. Say you stumble onto a buyer that you didn't know you were going to be showing. You need to have access to something great to keep those with you. But if I have an opportunity, I'm going to do a long form over the short form personally. So as we jump into the buyer representation agreement, the first part is parties. Pretty straightforward. Client's information. If it's one person, if it's two people, if it's 27 people, you'll put all of their information in here, their address, their phone number. There's a spot for two emails if it's a husband and wife or spouses or partners or whatever. Get both of their email addresses because you're going to need it. So much of what we do is electronic now. You're going to need that to be able to send documents over for electronic signature. Title company is going to want their contact info through email. So get both emails if you have them. Next section is our info, the broker information, address, phone number, email address, because you're going to send a copy of this to your client, and they're going to want to have contact info, right? Our goal is for them to reach out to you as the sales agent, but they need to have contact information for the brokerage as well. They'll get that with the information about broker services. We have another video on the page going through detail of that that's provided as soon as you first contact with somebody, but we also put it in this place. Then it gets down to definitions, right? This is talking about the properties that we're going to actually show them, right? C, market area. This can be anything as detailed as a specific address if you're doing a buyer representation agreement for just one property that you're showing them, or it can be multiple. It could be multiple addresses, it could be zip codes, it could be city, it could be a neighborhood. Um, I use county here in rural East Texas. We pretty specific to our county. So a lot of times I'll use Russ County, Texas. Here, I see people put four, five, six different counties. I've seen people put the state of Texas. I caution you to not do that because your responsibility to your client is to be knowledgeable in your market area. I'm pretty knowledgeable in this area, but you get me Dallas, Fort Worth area, Houston, San Antonio. Take me out to El Paso, and I have no idea. Do I have access to the info? Maybe, but am I knowledgeable in the market? So this shouldn't expand past what you're knowledgeable of your area. So I'm gonna put that here. Number four is term. This is how long your buyer representation is good for. I try to put at least 90 days. A lot of times I'll put 6 months. The reason I don't do it for a day or 2 weeks, you have that option. But if I show them a house, we decide to negotiate, we get under contract. If you can get a deal from contract to close in 30 days, it was a good deal. So a lot of times we need those 60, 90 days or a little bit more, especially if we don't buy the first house they look at, which is very normal. So I try to put at least 3 months, try to stretch it out to 6 months is what I prefer on this. The next two sections, the broker responsibility and the client responsibility, there are obligations. I mean, we both have obligations by this, right? Mine is to help locate a property, prepare and submit offers, negotiate terms, guide them through the inspections, the contracts, all the way to the closing table. but they also have obligations to me, right? They're by signing this form and creating this legal agreement, right? They're agreeing to work exclusively with me during this term. They're going to communicate honestly with me, and they're going to notify me if they're already working with another broker. If they've already signed one of these, or there's an implied agency, implied representation with another broker, they owe me the obligation to know that, so we don't run into an issue down the road. I put them under contract, and then another agent shows up and say, "Hey, I've been working with them. I have an agreement." So that's part of their obligation. On the top of page 2, it's actually on the top of all the other pages 2 through 6. This one box, as a broker running compliance, this is one of the most common missed boxes. Right, if you're doing it through Zip Forms or through Trek website, right, once you put this information in once, it populates across to the other pages. But again, not the end of the world, but compliance wise, we need this filled out. Make sure you're filling that out. Then we get down to number 7, the broker compensation. And when people start talking about money, I see so many agents get uncomfortable and just try to avoid it. Guys, this is how we get paid. You work, you're spending time, you're spending resources working with these people to get paid. So we have to have those conversations. Don't be afraid of it. All commission is negotiable, right? But when I get to paragraph 7, I just tell them, this explains how I get paid, right? Typically, the sellers pay the buyer's agent through the listing brokerage, but this section explains also what happens if that's not the case and ensures I'm getting paid for what I do, right? So as you go through, when you get to the first box, paragraph A, broker's fees. When earned and payable, we'll touch on that in a minute, but when earned and payable, client will pay the broker. This client we're talking about right here is our buyer that we're signing this listing agreement with. The client will pay the broker, whether you're doing a flat fee, which we're seeing more and more of, or a percentage of the sales price, right? Common percentage has been 3% forever. We're seeing 2.5% more often. Some brokerages banned their commissions, right? 3% up to 500,000, 2.5% from 500,000 to 1,000,000, and 2% anything over 1,000,000. But that's a conversation to have with your broker. They're going to have their own processes that they set. But for this one, we'll put 3%. Paragraph B is a retainer that is optional. So what this is at the time that we sign this, they can have to pay you up front $500, $1,000, whatever you agree to, and then you have the option to apply or not apply this towards any other fees owed to the broker later. So if they pay you $1,000 retainer, you get them, find them a home, you get them under contract, your commission's $3,000. They owe you an additional $2,000 if you select that you will apply this to other compensation. Then you get to C, and it talks about source of compensation. We're going to, and this is where we talk to the client about this, right? They're agreeing to pay us 3% if we have a commission that's earned and payable. Where does that come from? We're going to first seek to obtain the payment of the broker's fee from paragraph 7A earlier from our seller, right? If such parties refuse or fail to pay broker the full amount, client will pay broker the amount specified, right? They are agreeing and committing to making sure we get paid whatever you put in that blank in paragraph 7A. We're going to attempt to get it from the selling brokerage, representing that, since we're representing the buyer, but we still are due our commission when a deal closes, when it's earned and payable. And Part D talks about what does earned and payable mean, right? Broker's compensation is earned when client enters into a contract to buy the property or they breach this agreement, right? Broker's compensation is payable either during the term of this agreement or after it ends upon the earlier of the closing of the transaction to acquire the property. Closing is defined as signed, all documents, buyer and seller, are signed, and the transaction has been funded. That does not mean when it hits the seller's pocket. Once funds have went into escrow with the escrow officer, that is signed and funded. That is a closed transaction. or client's breach of the contract to buy or lease a property in the market area. Or third time that it's payable is if the client's breach of this is their breach of this agreement. Right, if client acquires more than one property under this agreement, broker's compensation for each property acquired is earned as each property is acquired and is payable at the closing of each acquisition. This buyer rep agreement is not property specific unless in the market area you put only one address. If I have a 6-month buyer rep agreement with a client for Russ County and they buy multiple properties in Russ County, this is a binding buyer representation agreement for any of those properties. So again, be able to explain this to people, be able to understand what they're wanting this agreement to do, because it binds both sides of the house. Um, there's some options about additional compensation if we're getting referral fees from service providers, if there's a bonus being paid. Um, Again, if you have those specific situations, sit down, talk with your broker, make sure that your buyer rep agreement reflects those items. Then you get to G, protection period. People glass over this, still have a conversation about it. What this is, it means that starting the day after this agreement ends and continuing forward, that's a blank field. I usually put 90 days. It can be whatever you want. No later than 10 days after this agreement ends, I can send the client a written notice identifying each property called the client's attention during the term of this agreement. Right? This keeps a buyer and seller from me showing them a house, the seller contacting the buyer outside of that appointment, saying, "Hey, if you'll just buy it from me, cut your agent out, I'll make you a better deal." Right. Now, we have to, as agents, follow through with this. Right. We have 10 days to send them a document stating these are the properties we brought to your attention. Um, so if they close on a property that you showed them within those 90 days, you could be due your commission according to the earlier page. This paragraph survives termination of the agreement, right? Any of these agreements can be terminated any time with parties' agreements, but if it is terminated, this paragraph still stands. The protection period still is in place if you provide them within 10 days of that letter. But then you get to paragraph to G2, which says this paragraph will not apply if client or related party is during the protection period bound under a representation agreement with another broker. I've had agents call me and say, "Hey, I had a buyer rep agreement with them that expired, but I'm still in my protection period." No, I have signed a new buyer representation agreement with them, so therefore the protection period is no longer. Same thing happens on your listing agreements as well. So take some time, read through this, make sure you understand what the protection period is. Then you get down to I, county, amounts payable to broker to be paid in cash in. My brokerage is here in Russ County. That's our address of business. So no matter what county the property is in that we're selling or we're representing the buyer on, all of our amounts are payable here in Russ County. Right. Then you get down to representations. Right. Um, Again, read through them, know them, give them a copy, but these are just part of those obligations that we talked about earlier, right? Each person signing this agreement represents that the person has legal capacity and authority to bind the respective party. It says they're not part of another agreement with another broker. In the acquisition of property in this market area that we used, they can have a buyer representation agreement for somebody in Gregg County and still sign one with me in Russ County, right? But we can't be in the same market area. Then number 9 is intermediary. Again, check with your broker, check with your brokerage, make sure how they handle intermediary. But the intermediary status, what this is, they're agreeing to allow us to show them properties that are listed by myself, one of my listings, or somebody inside of my brokerage. I have several agents here in the office. We do a lot of business, and inside that business, we have buyers and sellers inside the office working with multiple agents. And you run across them where it's my listing, and I have one of my clients wanting to see it. So what this says is that they're willing to work with us in an intermediary status. Again, jump on the page. There's another video about intermediary, more detail about how it works. It can be tricky. It's not something to be scared of. It's just something that you need to make sure you understand before you go into an intermediary contract. So, but if they don't want to work inside the brokerage, they have the option to select no intermediary status as well. Then we get into confidentiality, agency relationships, fiduciary responsibility. Fun word to say, not a fun word to explain. But how are we going to handle issues? How are we going to handle confidentiality? Right? So take your time, read through these, understand them. I do not read through every line item in the buyer representation agreement when I talk to clients. Again, I'm going to give them a copy. I need to understand it to be able to answer their questions if they have them, right? What is mediation? When do we use it? They're agreeing to use mediation as a dispute resolution by signing this. What default is, what defines default in this agreement, attorney fees, limitation liability, and then addenda. Right, this is not checked. This comes with no check marks. These default in mine as checked because I'm going to use the information about brokerage services on every transaction I do. I'm going to use the general information on every transaction, and I'm going to use a wire fraud on every transaction. The rest of them, it just depends on the home, the situation. Am I going to give everybody a lead-based paint brochure? No. If the house is not built after 78, I'm not going to. So all of these special provisions, you're going to see special provisions throughout most documents we have in some of our contracts, listing agreements, special provisions. This is a spot for factual information. Again, as a sales agent, you are not an attorney. You cannot change the terms of and the wording of any of these documents. These are Trek approved. Texas Realtors puts them out through zip forms is the what we use. But this is for factual information that needs to be added. Then we've got fair housing laws. Again, I'm not an inspector, I'm not an appraiser, I'm not a surveyor. So, again, several notices, and then you get down to signatures. Here's my brokerage, here's my brokerage license number, and then the agent license number as well for them to have. So, 6 pages, pretty simple, pretty quick. Should take you just a couple of minutes to go through, explain it, let them read it, answer any questions, get that signature, create that relationship, and go find them a house. This is the 1 page short form. This is what I recommend everybody. Keep IABSs, keep consumer protection notices, and keep buyer representation short forms in your binder, in your backpack, in your glove box, wherever you are. Keep these with you so you have easy access. Again, verbal means something, but written is what creates the relationship. You're going to hear it over and over and over. Unless it's in writing, it doesn't have teeth. Again, same exact thing we just went through, just stripped down to the basics. We've got parties, we've got definitions of the market area, right? Address, subdivision, city, state, zip, yada, yada, yada. How long you're going to do it, what type of service are they going to do a full service and agree to commission? Are we just showing them a couple houses for a flat fee? You have both of those options. What our obligations are, what their obligations are. Here's your commission that was detailed on page 3, I believe. Right, earned and payable, source of payment. Intermediary, do they or do they not agree to it? Signatures. This is the exact same binding document as the 6 page long form. It just doesn't have as much information on it. So if you have questions, grab a supervisor, grab a broker, grab a experienced agent, but understand the information so you can have intelligent conversation when you sit down with your client. Go out, find your people, get a representation agreement signed, and go find them a house. So, thank y'all. If y'all have questions, reach out, shoot a message, shoot an email, grab your broker, but keep doing what we do, guys. If you enjoyed this video and would like to learn more about the real estate industry, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.